Good morning. You're listening to Drinking Socially, the official Untappd podcast.
Your inside look into what's happening in the Untappd community and the world of beer.
I'm John. It's the season of holidays, obligations, and winter warmers. Fortunately, we've only got one of those on the agenda for this episode, and it's actually holidays. We're going to talk about beers. We're going to talk about the past. It's a great time to reflect on how we've gotten here to episode 65 of Drinking Socially, and some exciting new updates, including the year in beer.
That's right, and I'm Harrison. Tonight will be full of beers of Christmas past and present, and beers of Christmas yet to come, or something like that. And I, for one, am excited to look back at our year in beer, kind of see what we've been up to. I imagine most of you who have been listening to Drinking Socially for the past season have a pretty good idea of a lot of them already, but it was fun going back. I found some kind of cool surprises, stuff I had earlier in the year that from breweries I now really like. So pumped to share that with you today. But first, Drinking Socially is released every other Wednesday morning and can be found at podcast.untappd.com.
Or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Exactly.
Now, getting started on this episode, Harrison and I are fortunate is the word I'm going to use, in that we got together a group of 8 friends.
Oh, yeah, right.
There was a connection from a different part of the country. There was an exchange of money.
Right.
And it involved financial approval from spouses.
Yep.
But we were
Big
just
deal.
sharing what was my first check-in of
Likewise.
Sam Adams Utopias.
Yeah. Pretty wild stuff. That is so 2019's Utopia is a pretty wild beer. I think we counted 6 or 7 different barrels that had rested in before we got to try it. So crazy intense beer, but really cool. A cool way to prep us for the podcast. Absolutely.
Very well prepped. The question I asked, for those of you that have had the beer, heard of the beer, and never heard of it, it's sits around 28% ABV. It's technically a beer.
Right.
My question is, if anybody can answer this black and white for me, how is Sam Adams Utopias a beer and Brandy? How are they different? But that was an amazing start. We had a little bit of Christmas celebrating here at the office, and now it's starting to kind of carry that on.
Right.
Harrison and I have some Christmas-themed beers.
Yeah.
The first one we're going to start with, hopefully everybody's had a chance at least most of us on the Eastern U.S. probably have seen this one. Harrison, can you kind of fill me in on the details here?
Yeah, so beer number 1 today is Christmas Ale from Great Lakes Brewing Company out of Ohio. And style it's classified as a winter ale, comes in about 7.5% ABV. Notes on it: a holiday ale brewed with honey and spiced with fresh ginger and cinnamon. And I used to do a lot of work with Great Lakes when I was managing a bar and restaurant outside of Philadelphia. Did a lot of beer dinners with them and got to know their reps really well. And at one point, probably this must have been around 2011 or 2010 or maybe 2009, this beer in the month of December outsold Budweiser in the state of Ohio. And I don't know if it was just draft or overall or whatever. That's a pretty serious claim to, be a seasonal beer that outsells the most well-known beer in the world in that Great Lakes home state of Ohio. But big deal, and people used to freak out about it and still do. And they have Christmas in July there at the brewery where they release like a limited batch of it just at the brew pub in the summer. But it's it may be kind of one of my first winter kind of beer memories as well, or kind of realizing that was a style or a sub-style or whatever you want to call it of beer. But it's one I've had a lot.
I'm going to totally echo that. This beer sits for a seasonal at over 300,000 check-ins. About 7,000 so far this month.
Nice.
It holds a 3.8 rating. It's 7.5 ABV. That's kind of the initial spec sheet on it. But I do, as all things, we always like to ask, what's your first beer memory, especially whether you're on the podcast or joining the Facebook group. it's really foggy.
Right. That's a constant between, all of our stories. Yeah, it's but this one I remember the first time I had it. I remember when this came out, the Great Lakes rep coming to me and being like, "Hey, I got 50 of them. I got 50 6-year-olds of this. Do you want one or not?" And I was one of my first experiences of being like, "Whoa, an allotted beer coming to me,
an allocated beer.
Here we go." Right, that's exactly right. Something that's hard to get, and again at the time it was a pretty big deal. So excited to go back here.
This is good, man. 7.5. I snuck a sip in while Harrison was talking. I think what I would grab onto the most is the ginger. Maybe it's because of the infusion episode we did last.
Still in our noses.
That the ginger takes away any of the cloyingness that comes with this beer and makes me looking forward to my next sip right away.
Yep, I agree. Yeah, tons of ginger. And then as it warmed, I'm kind of sitting here waiting for sip number 2, a little bit of cinnamon in the back, but yeah, it's not like overly sweet. It actually almost finishes a little dry, which is nice. But, one that, I like the ABV on it. It's not too boozy, but it's definitely not a sessionable beer. So a couple of these can warm you right up, and that's really what you're looking for this time of year. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I feel like I had a cask of this once with something crazy in it, like candy canes or something. Who knows?
Could be pretty cool.
But
Christmas up any beer.
Right, exactly. Just candy canes. Candy canes.
This looking on Untappd, one thing that I think is pretty, we're in North Carolina, which is, I suppose, we'll say 600 miles away from Great Lakes Brewery in Ohio and Cleveland.
Yeah.
This beer's on the shelf. There's probably 15 verified venues nearby that have it on their menu. So it should be, again, I think, hopefully pretty easy to come by.
Yep. Honey comes in a little bit, that honey kind of starter right in the beginning. And they also just released their Blackout Stout, which I really enjoy looking at their brewery page on Untappd. But this is, on the brewery page, their top beer is Christmas Ale. Which is pretty cool as well because, their Dortmunder Gold is kind of everywhere too in their distribution footprint. And Edmund Fitzgerald, their porter, is like
Edmund Fitzgerald, they do a great job with that porter.
Right, and that's their second top beer.
The fact that their Christmas Ale is their number one, immediately I think of Southern Tier and Pumpkin and how they kind of like, everybody makes a pumpkin beer now, but pumpkin is that's the bar.
That is the bar, yeah. So very much the same story here with Great Lakes. I'd absolutely agree with that. But it's cool. Yeah, it's a winter ale. It's not classified as a winter warmer. We can talk about that a little bit today as we run through.
Actually, I tried doing a little bit of research on a winter warmer, a winter ale. It seems to kind of boil everything down. Christmas beers are made by tradition more than rules. You don't have to put clove in there. You commonly will, but I couldn't find like a stern rule set. And perhaps in the Netherlands or someplace where they have a more learned history on beer making, there'd be some rules to follow. Harrison, can you help me out?
Yeah, and I think they're almost interchangeable. Or winter warmer, holiday ale, winter ale. You're right. It kind of comes down to like spices, amount, availability. I feel like, I could be wrong here. I'm trying to scratch my brain, but I feel like the winter warmer maybe has a more narrow definition where winter ale could almost be anything. It's like the umbrella term, if you will, that winter warmer falls under. But I've seen them used interchangeably certain places. Sometimes winter warmers and old ales also kind of cross pollinate. Yep. So then you've got ABV coming into play. But yeah, it's and then also sometimes it's just kind of like a malt forward beer that's brewed in the winter months, and like that's what it was originally. And it doesn't need to have cloves, doesn't need to have anything in it. It's just kind of on the darker side, but not as dark as a stout.
Like a big, I'm picturing like 200 years ago, like this really, really malty amber ale.
That's
like an old ale I drink for Christmas.
Yeah, and it's basically just like an old ale in the winter. So, Yeah. Now you have more variety, but certainly the history of it kind of comes from essentially an old ale made for the winter months. It's not quite as dark as a stout, but definitely on the malty side of things. And the spices kind of, which we've talked about in other episodes, have always been part of kind of brewing traditions. Hops being the one that everyone knows now, which is a flower, but it wasn't unheard to throw bay leaves and stuff like that into beers. But yeah, it's cool.
I can't think of it off the top of my head now. I want to say it's in Texas. There's a big, well-known craft brewery that puts juniper in theirs, and that's a flavor that I'll chase. And I'm probably getting it wrong anyways, but it makes me feel better to hear you say that. Like a winter beer is essentially, if we look at it today, kind of a seasonal thing. It doesn't necessarily have to hit any certain adjunctual guideline.
Right. Yeah, I think it more. Yeah, and then even you could talk about Christmas beer being like a type of winter warmer that has more alcohol than a winter warmer does. But these are not hard and fast rules like you would find with Kolsch's or lambics or things like that.
Could we say the Sierra Nevada Celebration is a Christmas beer or a winter beer?
I qualify it as that because I drink it during Christmas. But right. Again, like that old ale, I would call it a winter ale, sure. But at that point, what are you really saying about the beer? I think it's more useful to say it's a fresh hop IPA, but absolutely, if you're talking about a kind of stronger beer that's made to be enjoyed in the winter months, that is Celebration too. Again, how useful that is, who knows? But yeah, it seems like the winter warmer itself, winter ale, there's some consensus, but it seems to just be lots of variety is what you're going to find. Don't expect the same thing from one brewery's winter warmer or winter ale to the next, which is fun.
I wish I was more researched in the history of Christmas and winter drinks. I'm going to try and touch on this subject with Harrison as we drink through, and Scandinavian glog and Lithuanian kvass, which I probably don't say right. In Germany, there's a Chris Kinmarkt. I'm going to try that. If you're listening in Germany, please let me know how terrible I did. But I love the idea that Christmas is kind of celebrated almost worldwide as maybe the largest holiday we know in the world of Earth.
Right.
But you go different places and everybody does it a little bit differently. And it kind of touches on what I love about craft beer today. This beer here, differently than the next one we're about to drink for sure.
Yeah.
Both would be arguably Christmas themed. One thing I usually leave to Harrison because he always picks up on it right away, but this is amazingly clear.
Yes, I know for a fact that Great Lakes has a centrifuge, which most big breweries do, which is basically a fancy way of spinning the beer while under pressure to kind of, right before you package it, to kick out any particulates at all. So their beers that need to be crystal clear, like the lagers they make, which they do the Dortmunder and they do Elliott Ness and a couple other ones. And this beer are super clear. Their pales are a little more they have a little more haze in there, and their IPAs and stuff. But I think that's the case across the board. But this one, crystal clear, and it's that centrifuge doing a lot of work. I remember, again, I used to work with Great Lakes all the time. Like the day they got it, the rep came in to talk to me. He was super pumped about how like he was going to be able to. It was exciting for him because it just meant, more quality beers that would last longer, and he would be able to, kind of cover more ground or whatever. So, so centrifuge, that's what's happening here. And in addition to, this sitting, I don't think they lager this, but it doesn't need to be rushed to the bottling line like a lot of IPAs these days can be, in the interest of keeping that fresh hop character. This one you don't need to cut your cellar time down. But they have a big old centrifuge, which again a lot of breweries do.
That almost makes me want to ask. I know it's 7.5. It's in a glass bottle. This isn't a beer that I would want to age.
Right.
but the new and older John has decided that I don't want to age my one-off beers anymore. I want to age beers that I can get every year and compare how they've changed. This would be one I'd be really interested to hear if someone has one laying over from last year. I tried to look through on Untappd, but I couldn't get past December 5th. Just about, I think I probably have about 30 friends that have checked this beer in recently.
Right.
So, I mean, that's really cool to see. I just haven't been able to find anyone that's bragging about last year's.
Right. And you could, I mean, it's not crazy. Like the spices would last, but it's not crazy spicy. I think it's probably better enjoyed fresh, but you can always try. And I mean, it's not bottle conditioned, so it may not change that much, but that's the whole point of that centrifuge is like that, stuff lasts longer, stays fresher longer because you don't have those weird kind of nucleation points of particulate stuff sitting in the beers that can create oxidation and oxidize the beer and off flavor and stuff like that. So yeah, interesting. I don't know. I have not done it with this beer, but you could. It's kind of right around that range where usually like 8 and above, you're okay for a year. Wouldn't do it with an IPA. That's a whole other conversation about what to age and not. We keep talking about. We'll talk about one day, but we will talk about it one day. We
definitely tease at it. I kind of led you down a path there, Harrison. We had mention in the Facebook group, and we had a lot of people posting in the Facebook group, which is my favorite thing about it. Just to hear, what are you doing with the beer that you're drinking? How do you use Untappd? How do you celebrate? The one that caught my eye, I'm trying to scroll through the feed and find it here, but there was someone in the group that was talking about a good beer to age and kind of celebrate with their significant other.
Right.
Like, what could I buy a case of? And every couple anniversaries, we crack one open. I think the suggestion that it was a personal win for me. Somebody suggested make a mead or get a mead because that you can sit on for an incredibly long time. My wife and I bought everything we needed to make a mead, and over a year just spread that honey onto other things. We never got it into bottles, but I loved the idea. The question I'm trying to ask is, off the top of your head, are there any beers or styles you could think of that might be able to survive well kept for 5 years so that you could, kind of have that tradition with the person that lends you room for cellaring beers?
Right, exactly right. To pay your rent for the cellar that should be a closet full of something more useful or whatever. Yeah, that's a good question. Specific. It's really what I look for is ABV style. So usually something darker, although Belgian things can be great. And oftentimes the most interesting and change the most. If it's bottle conditioned, that's good. I think that helps the beer last longer, and also kind of it's still changing it in the bottle. So that will definitely also change how it tastes over months, years. 5 years is a while. I don't know. Like let me see. I will have the chance to try a 5-year-old KBS this year from 2015, and 2020 it'll be 5 years. So that'll probably be, let me think about that.
You should bring that in. We should. I want to share.
We should. You're right, John. Sold. And I'm trying to think. I've been to, fancy, beer bars and had stuff from the cellar from the early 2000s. And most of it's Belgian stuff, Cantillon things and Fatome and stuff like that. And a lot of it's really cool. But at that point, you are like, just the cork and cage stuff. You're rolling the dice like you would with wine, where maybe it's corked or not, or each bottle's going to be different. It could be bottled next to each other, and one could be good and one could be bad. Or if you have it in a hot place, cold place, like there's so many variables. So that also comes into it. It's like, where do you keep it for 5 years so it doesn't get messed up? Somewhere dark, away from the light, that's not going to get too warm. But if you're like looking for like the safest one, probably just a big old stout. The boozier, the better. And see what that does over time. I wouldn't do it with tons of adjuncts in it. But those are so, most of them relatively so new. You really don't know what one would taste like 5 years after it's been bottled, because a lot of them have only come around in the past couple of years that have adjuncts in them. So it's a good question. I don't have enough data to answer it, but when I think about it, and what I have in my cellar are just big old stouts that I hopefully one day will drink, and a couple of big old Belgian beers too.
Too big for me to drink alone.
Right, I can't. Right, I'm looking at it and I'm like, nah, that's not. I can't do that tonight. I have things to do tomorrow.
It was Maribeth made the post in Drinking Socially. If you keep an amazing cellar, if you're listening to this and you're like, oh my gosh, I've got the perfect beer, join the group, share your recommendations. I thought it was an amazing post. I mean, you're building a tradition along with marriage, which should be a tradition there too.
And I think it'd be cool if you can find, I mean, nowadays, just find some beer that your favorite local brewery releases once a year, or a regional brewery that releases a seasonal around the time you got married, and get it every year and make that be like a thing you do, as opposed to cellaring something. Or if it's like an imperial stout they release every year, get 2 bottles each year, and then each year drink a vertical of it, or something like that. Where
go to Dark Lord Day every year.
Have that. Get married at Dark Lord Day. There you go. I'm sure it's happened. I'm sure it's been done.
If not, Harrison is online certified.
That's right. I am. Yep. You fly me to you and get the beers, and I'll do the singing and the dancing.
Getting through this Christmas beer, we've got one next that is equally Christmas beer. I think in my head, it's a Christmas beer if it reminds me of a cookie.
Yeah. Right.
And I can't think of one that would remind you of a cookie more than this one from the famed Hardywood out of Virginia. I think the claim is that they're the first or second craft brewery that's set up in Virginia, or at least in Richmond.
Right.
Awesome. So they've got a few spots. They've opened up a brewery that's focusing on kind of health-minded beers. I always want to call it Sun Pop Brewery, and I almost always get it wrong.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about.
I think we mentioned it in a few episodes ago. But I mean, these guys they make some incredible beers. The story about this one is I met a guy who owned a bar. He was from Virginia. As soon as he said that, I said, hey, what do you know about Hardywood? It's around Christmas time. This beer comes out. Do you think when you're up there, you could score one and bring it back for me or anything? And it's been about 3 years, and still randomly when I see him around town, I just happened to see him a couple of days ago, and he said, hold on, I got a couple in my truck. So thank you, Wes. You're an awesome dude. Harrison will kind of roll us through the specs on Hardywood's gingerbread. If you've got it in front of you,
I do.
This one's got a little bit more of a story and a little bit rip, man. Let her go.
Right, and this is the original. I think there's some variants of this, right? Different kind of.
Yep, I've seen it barrel aged. I think there's a few different ones that they do.
Cool. So it's brewed with baby ginger from the Castle Monte, I hope I'm saying that right, farm, wildflower honey from the Bearer Farms. It's kind of, as in their words, capturing the terroir of Central Virginia, rich, creamy libation, velvety mouthfeel, kind of flavors of milk, chocolate, vanilla, some honeycomb, cinnamon, ginger, of course, popping through there. And it's one I've actually never had, so I'm excited to check it out. And apparently there's also some Madagascar bourbon vanilla beans and Vietnamese cinnamon in here too. So there's a lot going on, but it's classified as on the bottle itself, imperial milk stout with cinnamon, vanilla, and fresh local ginger and honey. So those are all things I like, and I love gingerbread cookies and houses.
And all cookies, as I've learned.
Sure, yeah. I really can't. This is a tough time of year for me. I mean, it's great, but I end up feeling horrible every day because of the amount of cookies I consume. So this beer will be just another liquid version of that, and I'll be happy for a while, I hope. But it's, and they even say, we talk about celery, and they say, enjoy it fresh, cellar it for later. You do you. But I'm pumped about it because I've heard about it a lot. It's a beer you hear about living in the Southeast U.S. and but I've never had the chance to get it. I don't think it leaves Virginia to Hardywood, at least in official distribution. No, am I wrong?
I don't think Hardywood distributes outside of Virginia yet. I know that you'll find them at a couple of festivals worldwide. Mm-hmm. They'll go to. They've done a couple of festivals overseas. I think they were at an event from Burial this year.
Yeah.
So they travel well. This beer, to put it in comparison with the Great Lakes Christmas Ale, has been checked in about 1,500 times this month. Mm-hmm. So 15% of that volume, but it's just in Virginia. That's pretty impressive.
Yep.
About 72,000 check-ins overall.
Yeah.
So at least a good portion of people have either had a friend like Wes from Virginia bring them a bottle, or been to Virginia to drink one. I think this was the Christmas whale for so long. Mm-hmm. That I just wanted to get my hands on. I've had it twice before now, but This is my first time having I'll say an unbarreled version.
Right.
So I expect this to be maybe a little bit more drinkable. It's still 9.2. I don't know. Right. I'm sure it's going to make me feel really comfortable.
Mm-hmm. And I lied. I had this once before, and I think I remember the day. It was at the office here, 4th of December, 2017. Thanks, Untappd. Just got a sample of it from someone else who had a bunch of it. So excited to sit here with a little more of it today and actually take it down with my full attention now. Focus on the original gingerbread stout from Hardywood. Let's check it out, John. Let's get in here.
Oh, it smells really good. I'm definitely taking a nose on this one because no one can see me.
Right.
So I'm going to go right in.
Dive it in.
It smells
great.
More sweet than anything. Like it does kind of resemble a baked good.
Absolutely.
It's dark.
Like gingerbread cookie.
The head's kind of that beautiful tannish color. Mm-hmm. I don't often hear people reviewing the bubbles in their head, and I try never to say it out loud, but people that are listening professionally, but the bubbles, the head, the cascade on the side of the glass here is just reminding me of a perfectly poured Guinness, and this came from a bottle. The head looks beautiful.
It's not nitrogenated at all. Yeah, nice carb on it, looking good. A lot of happy bubbles. Not too big, not too small.
Ooh,
super smooth.
Son of a gingerbread.
This is one of those beers where you start having it. Maybe you're about to go to bed. You open this up and you're like, "No, we're going to watch Die Hard 2 now. We're just going to keep going. One is not enough. There's another one that's also in the holiday season." So that was. This is what this time of year is for. These kind of beers, cold out. Give me something big and dark and with a ton of flavor, and let me enjoy it and sip on it for a while. This is great, and it's not too. I don't want to sound like a humbug, but I consider myself loving just stouts. Period. Like a great imperial stout. It doesn't need to have anything crazy in it. I'll drink it and think it's great. Like I'll drink Old Rasputin from North Coast any day of the week and marvel at how just the grains alone are doing all those cool things. But this is got all the stuff in it, but it's not like you're trying to enjoy it or you're trying to pick out flavors or you're overwhelmed by all the things happening at all. It all works really well together. It's not sweet, even though it's a milk stout, and has some honey in it. This is great. Like it's very well balanced and tastes more like it just tastes really well put together. Everything is kind of measured well in its place, all the different flavors.
Yeah, this tastes like me wearing an uncomfortable sweater, sitting on a couch with too many people,
sweating,
watching Home Alone,
right?
Maybe playing Scrabble or something like that. But this beer is like the shining light in a snowstorm that I just latch on to.
Right,
it's comfortable. It tastes comfortable and welcoming.
Right. This to me tastes like me standing up in that room where I'm wearing the sweater and sweating and saying, I'm going to check on the ham and just going out to the deck for an hour and a half and drinking this by myself. Where is Harrison? What is he doing? Is the ham done? I'll check. I guess I'll check. And I'm just forgotten. I'm just forgotten on the deck in the quiet,
back
in the
to
dark.
Scrabble.
Right, just with the dogs looking at me. Like, are you all right out here? Do you have food? Do you have food? Everyone has food tonight. Do you have food as well? Nope, leave me alone. But yeah, no, this is, like you said, I got a holiday in a bottle.
It makes me think of brownies, and I mean, I think every time we drink, this would be labeled as a dessert or pastry stout in my head. And every time I have one, I immediately think, let's throw it in a brownie box and bake it up and see what it does to the brownies. Like, don't add water, just add the beer and an egg or whatever fat it calls for, and bake it up.
Bunch of butter and lard.
Or don't bake it. You know, you could just
eat it with a spoon at that point.
Now let's slow down. But I mean, this would. I think I'm hungry, but this would be amazing in what is it, like a crock pot that you set it at 2 in the afternoon, and you come back and eat it at 9 o'clock at night.
Right.
Put like a pork shoulder in there,
brisket,
and then pull that apart. I mean, it would almost be like barbecue dessert. I would eat it. I would eat a lot of it.
Definitely, yeah. We do a fair amount of cooking this time of year with beer. This would be a good one. You're right, or just a dump in a chili, whatever. Just have a bottle for yourself to drink, a bottle for the chili. Yeah, no, it's right. You're right. It kind of gets me thinking about what else can we do with it, or what could be done. Yeah, that's so for all you foodies, creatives out there, this is one to seek and check out for more than one reason. Drink it, cook with it, whatever you want. It's definitely cool. It's again, very proud to be, as I said, labeled the original kind of gingerbread stout. I'd have this idea first. They have some cool kind of variants of this. They have Christmas pancakes. They have Christmas morning, which I think has like coffee in it. You would assume more coffee. A bourbon barrel-aged version of this, like we were talking about. So definitely kind of riding the Christmas train on the beer side of things and having fun with it, which is what you should do.
And this is one of my favorite, going through this beer. I have not nearly as many friends on Untappd that have checked into this beer. Great photos. Most of them, you can tell it's Christmas. A couple of people that work with us. I've got Jared from the Facebook group who's drinking a 2019 version. And because his friend and him went back and forth, I can see he's very happy with, he got this for $5. My gosh, Jared. Okay. Great find.
Yeah.
A couple other people, Christmas cookie in a glass, one of my favorite Christmas beers. Dan A., thin but strong ABV, milky stout, subtle cinnamon, more present honey and ginger. That's the type of review that I leave knowing I'm going to come back to this beer next year and I'm going to compare what were the standouts. And then my favorite review actually comes from, I think this was in April or May.
Nice.
But my favorite Untappd, Velociraptor K. So Velociraptor checked into this and says, very good beer, even better with a shot of macadamia nut liquor in it. Oh, I mean, that's like you take, what is it, like a Jaeger bomb?
Yeah.
And then just go ahead and put it through 8 years of college, give it a well-paying job. That's
and here we are. They made it out. Yeah, right. Blending happened at the right. I saw those check-ins too. Yeah, and so, variation. So Christmas morning is is this beer, which is gingerbread stout, but with Brazilian and Sumatran coffee beans. Christmas pancakes is this stout re-fermented with maple syrup, which is pretty cool. They have bourbon GBS, the gingerbread stout, and then Kentucky Christmas morning, which is Christmas morning aged in bourbon barrels.
Wow.
So there's this beer itself. I mean, that I think I've just put a destination on my my beer map of going to Hardywood Park this time of year and
trying a flight of all of those. Yep.
And you look at a lot of the pictures, and that's what it is people at the brewery or in their locations with just flight glasses in front of them and all these things happening at once, which would be a heck of a night.
This would be amazing to go from variant to variant. I mean,
absolutely.
Sitting on it for a year, I'd like to see how much it smooths out. But if you could get me Kentucky morning and Christmas pancakes and be able to try all those in one sitting.
I mean, yeah, wow. Good goal. Good goal to have. We'll see.
There we go. It's getting close to time to set goals. We're close to New Year's.
That's right. Good. That's
one pre-redactation. That's a word I just made up. But Hardywood's subsidiary brewery is Sun Crush.
Sun Crush, right? I saw. I meant to say something.
I kind of phrase it as like an athletic-minded brewery. I think of like the beers I want to drink in the summer. They make a ginger lime version that's on my wish list. It's brewed with green tea that sounds like a lawn mowing beer, or maybe just a wait to mow the lawn tomorrow, but drink it today beer.
Yeah, loving it. Digging it. It's great.
Let's see. So as we're drinking Christmas beers, Harrison, some of the things I wanted to ask you, we kind of talked about maybe your first Christmas beer memory. I mean, like I said, it's foggy.
Yeah.
Do you have a best Christmas beer memory, whether it's just you drinking a beer during Christmas or a time where someone introduced you to Sam Smith's Winter Welcome? And
the Great Lakes one, as I said, I mean, I remember the first time I had that, and that was cool because I was kind of starting out in the beer world and had like this good relationship with the brewery that was very sought after, and got some limited stuff from them and could hype up my regulars and people in the area about it, and they could come on in and drink it. And so that was a cool kind of memory for me to be a part of other people discovering that beer, that style of beer. In terms of first, right, probably pretty foggy. I mean, my Christmas mornings was always kind of a lot of Bloody Marys in our house.
Okay.
That was kind of the Christmas morning routine. And then I would wait until someone wasn't paying attention to put on Die Hard and kind of see how long into the morning someone was like, how long is the TV? But what are we watching? Like, I don't know. I don't know who did it.
It's Hans.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. Yeah, usually at the first loud kind of gunfire scene, someone would be like, come kind of half wake up and be like, what's happening here? So yeah, a lot of Bloody Marys in our house. More recent years, it's kind of like, I mean, that's one of my favorite things to do is to when the house is quiet and the kids are asleep and I've got kind of the room to myself, maybe throw a fire in the fireplace, maybe, put the Christmas tree set up, and I put on something like, White Christmas with Bing Crosby and Danny Kaye, or some kind of classic It's a Wonderful Life with Jimmy Stewart, and drink whatever. Like at that point, I almost don't even, have a tradition there on the beer side. It's more of kind of just looking back to a simpler time and sitting there in the quiet of a midsummer's or midwinter's eve, and just taking it in, taking the moment in for what it is. Last year we did a lot of Oscar Blues. I got their 15 pack like right before Christmas break or whatever you want to call it, a couple of days off we had, and which they do like a couple of their year rounds, and now they're rotating hazy IPAs in there too. That was great of just kind of having a variety to run through of beers that from a solid brewery that I enjoy. And I have been thinking deeply about what is that beer going to be this year. And I don't know yet, so I'm on the hunt. I really enjoyed Snow Day from New Belgium. I recently had that after it not being in production for a while, and loved it. And that's it's like a black, they call it a winter ale. It's a black IPA basically, but like really hop with a bunch of high alpha acid hops. So it's like a bitter, dark beer, and it's great. So that may be doing the rounds in my house for a while until something else kind of comes along. But that's kind of the long and the short of it for me, memory-wise. Starts with Bloody Marys. More recently, it's more been about kind of the watching Danny Kaye dance around and seeing how long it took for me to just switch everything over to Die Hard again. I guess I watch Die Hard a lot this time of year. I'm one of those guys.
It gets a lot of streams. You mentioned a dark beer from New Belgium. It immediately made me remember when I was in retail sales, the beer that everyone would ask for from New Belgium was 1554.
Sure, right.
That's a great beer.
Great.
I can't place my finger on why that's the one everybody wanted, but it was one of the only black lagers that we had on the shelf most of it.
Yeah.
At any time,
and
really.
That's great. That's in their variety pack right now, which is what I got, how I found Snow Day again. And I think it's one of the best beers they make, and it's amazing. Yeah, it's like a 6%. They label it now as a dark ale. I could have sworn it was a dark lager. That's why I remember it being like a dark lager.
Me too, although we know memory is not always correct.
That's why we have Untappd to help us remember. But yeah, I just had a bunch the past weekend, and it was it had been a little bit since I had it, and yes, that's a great one. It went really well with everything else in that variety pack. It's probably going to be on rotation in my house for a bit, that whole variety pack, coming back again and again until it doesn't. But yeah, 5054, if you haven't had it, check it out. It's really cool. It's like a 6% dark ale or dark beer. But it's got like kind of spices in it, and it just it's like a light porter, but it just tastes like drinking at Hershey's bar. It's
sessionable porter.
Yeah, it's awesome.
How I remember thinking, trying to process. It doesn't fit all the other beers, but it stands out in a good way.
Oh yeah, it was very, very smooth, which to me, I think they still probably lager it for a bit, how smooth that beer was. But who knows? They do. I don't. But from what I tasted, it was great nonetheless. And I may have one of those later tonight. I think I'm going to watch Die Hard tonight. I think I've discovered where this night is going for me, John.
So one Christmas tradition I want to begin is Die Hard sabotaging the TV, and just seeing if I feel like my family wouldn't even notice or care. Right. But Die Hard's on. We'll take a break.
Right.
I think my favorite Christmas beer memory is that the first thing that comes to mind, which is always the one that it's hard to move past that, but it was 2 Christmases ago. I was home with my immediate family, with my mom and dad, and my brother was there, and my nephew was there, and it was a typical big Christmas gathering. Italian family, 40 different main courses and a bunch of cheese on the table and everything. It was amazing. But I remember my mom's occasionally she'll drink some wine, but she's never. So I remember that was like when I Can't Believe It's Not Your Father's Root Beer had happened.
Sure.
And there was an orange soda version. And that was like the first year that hard seltzers, I remember. It wasn't like the Mike's Lemonades of the world, but it was like a proper hard seltzer. Maybe it wasn't a White Claw, but I went to the store and I grabbed all those things thinking one of these, like, my mom's going to love.
Right.
The root beer was neat, but the bottle was sitting on the counter half drank for about an hour.
Right.
And then I didn't want to introduce the soda ones, so I jumped to the seltzer one. And maybe it was serendipitous. I had also been trying to teach my mother about like LaCroix and bubbly waters and stuff, and how they're pretty good, and that's my jam.
Right.
So she might have thought I was introducing her to a bubbly water.
Right.
But I gave her a hard seltzer, and it clicked. It was the best Christmas ever.
Right.
We were playing card games and yelling, and it was so much fun because my mom might have accidentally got drunk on seltzers because I forgot to tell her they were alcoholic.
Classic, the old bait and switch, right?
Great Christmas memory. So I kind of forgot about that until I started walking through it here.
That's awesome.
One question that I'd wanted to ask you, Harrison, I've been to a brewery, and I can say that I've like helped make a beer before.
Yep.
But as a person that actually did have, those are the boots I wear to work.
Yeah.
Is brewing life different around? I mean, I'm not talking like, how much cloves are we going to add to the winter beer this year, but like, are there any cool things that happen in a brew house? Like some businesses will give you a turkey or a ham.
Right.
Do you have any cool
it's a
memories
life,
of Christmas around the mash tun?
Oh, yeah. It was all those things, a lot of heavy metal Christmas music being played. And because you have to remember, you get in there early in the morning, you kind of got to wake yourself up and go from like being half asleep in your car to like, mashing 1,000 pounds of grain. And it's, it's going from cold to sweaty in, a minute. So being motivated and pumped up was kind of always the goal as soon as you got in. to kind of get your day going. But yeah, a lot of heavy metal tunes, a lot of Christmas trees set up, goofy sweaters. We had a really killer kind of, you could say, Christmas party or series of Christmas parties that we would do, either for like in the tap room or for just us. Personally, I'm pretty sure one of the years we kind of had like a round robin homebrew competition where you, as brewers, could homebrew a beer, and internally we would all taste the beers we all made and kind of vote through a bracket system, the best one. And we had decided that whoever beer we liked the most, we'd then make as a beer to serve to everyone else on the brewery, make a big batch of it. And that finals, I believe, ended around Christmas time of like, this is it. And which is pretty cool. And I didn't end up winning the competition, but the person's beer who won, I was on the brew shift for the day that we brewed that beer, which is pretty cool. And that beer went on to win a medal in the Great American Beer Festival. It was one of the last things I did was make that beer, which again was not my recipe, but it was just landed on my day, and got to make it, which was pretty neat. So not exactly Christmas related, but I'm finding a way to toot my own horn. But
sneakily, what I love about that story is effectively it's a really well-practiced home brewer making a beer that gets scaled up and eventually appreciated so much it wins a medal at the GABF. That's an awesome story. I think Ballast Point comes to mind, or Sam Adams Long Shot. But there's a couple breweries that'll do things like that where there's a homebrew competition and this professional brewery will brew your beer.
The Pro-Am. Well, Pro-Ams there's a whole category in the Great American Beer Festival, is the Pro-Am standing for Professional Amateur Hybrid, and you can enter a beer that you brew with a home brewer, and that's its own category. And for many festivals. Now this one won. I mean, this one was just the home brewed beers were just the brewers brewing on their own time. So it was all internal. It was just us making up recipes. So it wasn't like a customer or someone in the tap room doing it. So we didn't qualify for the Pro-Am, but qualified for the category of smoked. I think it was just smoked beer. I gotta look at the medal or whatever. But yes, ended right around Christmas. I think it might have been. Even culminated at one of the Christmas parties, maybe with that kind of final bottle share day, and so that's one of my fondest memories of just that leading up to it and knowing it happened around the holidays. But I mean, it's you get a case to take home. We want another case. We got all kinds of discounts for family members and gifts and stuff the time of year, and definitely celebrated in a cool way. Just. Oh man. Yeah, there were all kinds of, that's right. I remember more stories now. Yes, it was a very fun PG rated time.
With that, let's take a break. We'll get to our sponsor and come back with an update about Untappd and the year in beer, which I'm really excited to break down. So, if you'd like to show off your love of Untappd, you're more than free to check out the online store. Pick up Untappd branded glassware, shirts, sweatshirts, hats, more, beanies. It's getting cold out. Koozies, keep your fingers warm. To get there, take your web browser, go to store.untappd.com. When you get there may be codes that you've gotten off us from Instagram or social. If there isn't, or if you can't remember it, just use a coupon code podcast. Put whatever you want in your cart, go to checkout, use the code podcast. That'll get you 20% off every time you order from the store. Store.untappd.com, coupon code podcast. Today, December 18th, Harrison checked. Today, December 18th is the last day to place an order if you want to have some wrapped up Tiku glasses under your Christmas tree.
Right.
You can place an order whenever you want after December 18th.
Sure.
But today, if you're listening on the release on this Wednesday, this would be the day that you have to place your order so you can make sure it's there under the tree, whether it's a gift for your loved one or just something to drink your own Bloody Marys out of at 9 in the morning while planning a Die Hard takeover.
Right. Yeah, it all works. Awesome. But yeah, code is podcast. Check it out. Okay, so Untappd consumer update this week. We actually have a couple of things to talk about. There's a nice update that went out on Monday, I believe. John, what's kind of different now when you're surfing around on Untappd on the user end?
So I think the big push for this Untappd update was mainly geared for new users. So for those of us that have been around for a while, probably nothing essential. I think the first thing I noticed is that after updating, my profile picture shows up in the bottom right.
Yeah, that's really cool.
That's actually really cool. And I should update that. The main update was kind of geared at, I think we've got an amazing design team at Untappd, and they're finally able to kind of flex their muscles with some of the updates we've done and pretty things up a bit. So the theme, right, is just making it easier for when you log in to know where to go to find what you're looking for. And I think the biggest, honestly, it's been maybe a little while since we pushed like a brand new item in Untappd, the app. And for this release, when I heard about it, it was an FAB, and I had no idea what that was.
Right.
As all things, it just is computer code for floating action button. Which is that little plus button in the bottom right when you log into the app. And it kind of, the goal there is you know where to go to check into a beer if you've never used Untappd before, so it's easier to show your friends. But also what I really like about it is, you can be in almost any of the screens on the Untappd app. You click that button, it takes you to the beer search. And now when you use that, you search for the beer, and as soon as you click on the beer, it takes you right to the check-in page. So I know it seems kind of small, but it saves me, it doesn't open the beer and then I have to click check-in. I just click the plus, search the beer, check it in. Mm-hmm. And as I was talking this through with some of the team here, I realized everybody checks in beers in a different way. Some people go to the venue and say, I'm here, I'm going to check in. That, of course, that's all. You can turn that action button off if you don't like it there. The goal, is to make it easier for that first time or your third check-in on a long Thursday night after work. Click the button, find the beer, check it in. Hopefully make that a little bit easier so that you can get to the part about the beer that you love most, which is finishing it and opening up a new one.
More check-ins, more badges. But I dig it. It's fun. I've been doing that since we updated that little floating action button down there. It just makes it easier. And when you click on it, it kind of shows you some of the beers that you're close to and stuff at other venues and things like that. It's really neat. But it was it definitely jumps out at you, the update. It's with that navigation bar on the bottom being different and that FAB, that FAB.
Gotta love the FAB.
Gotta love the FAB.
They're already working on another push after this. They did one of the things that I actually read through on Reddit, when they changed the histogram of your check-in history. Right. I mean, that was, I think a couple of people, I saw people talk about it on Facebook and Insta and on Reddit, and it was awesome to hear the team say like, all right, we're going to roll this back. We want to try and figure out something that works with that still. It's one of the things that I always love about Untappd is that it's the people that use the app that always come first.
Yeah,
and
truly. I mean,
you can't make everyone happy. You'll never be able to check into a vodka tonic Bloody Mary on Christmas morning, or maybe not ever, maybe not soon, but it's really cool to hear how seriously they take that type of feedback, and hopefully that's well received. You can check in easier. The app looks cool. It shows your picture off. And if you check in at a location with a digital board and that picture pops up.
Looking good.
Hopefully there's a little preview to make sure your hair's done right. Or Harrison, your mustache is combed properly.
Yep. All important things.
One kind of shameless plug for the developers here. If you're an Android user and you want to get in on Untappd beta testing, you can go to the Google Play Store, go to Untappd, scroll down a little bit, and they're accepting applications. Essentially, you just say, I want to join the beta program, and you'll get these type of updates earlier than the public.
It's cool.
They're not 100% fleshed out, but it was really neat to see some people that were trying that button out even before the release and getting feedback about where it should be and stuff like that. So the thing that I think we're most excited about, it's Wednesday, December 18th.
Yes.
If all goes well, this is Untappd's release of your Year in Beer 2019.
Heyo.
And Harrison and I pulled some of our stats to share with you. Excited to hear about your own. But Harrison, you actually reminded me about this from the Year in Beer 2018 that we did. How's that work for you? What's your favorite part about it? Or
I mean, I love this whole thing. It's it's nice to kind of get a high level approach, scale out, look back. I mean, that's really. Again, the genesis of Untappd, not just it was one of the kind of goals for Greg and Tim was to have this kind of really cool beer journal. And it's nice to kind of take a moment and look back at what you've done the past year, remember things you'd forgotten you'd enjoyed so much, or places you went, or people you hung out with, and bottle shares you did. This lets you do that and do it in a really easy to kind of navigate way that's fun, and share that with your friends too. So it's just nice to kind of look back, because I remember there were a fair amount of breweries that I couldn't remember if I had the first time this year or last year, and sure enough, this helped clear all that stuff up. So just kind of getting that nice overall overview of where I've been, where I've come, and also this year specifically after the the podcast started, seeing how that had influenced my beers I was checking in, and how many more, and what kinds, and if my styles changed from the year prior. It was that was fun to do. What about you, John? What jumped out for you?
I think I'm going to echo that. Those of you that are familiar with Spotify or have a friend that is probably got inundated with everybody's favorite artist a couple of weeks ago.
Baby Yoda.
And so, I mean, the cool part about I use Untappd as my main source of social media, and I use it for a lot of different things personally. Harrison and I talk about what beers would be good to put on the next podcast episode. And there's a lot of considerations there. What I think is really cool is when you can zoom out, like Harrison said, and take a really high level view and see, here's the beers that you drank. And we'll go through a few segments, but it should be, by the time you're listening to this, go to the Year in Beer on Untappd's website. I'm pretty sure we're going to send everybody out an email. Check it out. It's self-appreciating, but it's so cool to see the beers you checked in most, the styles, where you went, and if you like it, show it off, share it with your friends.
Yeah, I mean, right. If you're a true beer explorer, that's a cool part of it, the map itself, to look and see kind of where you were, and if you travel a lot for business, fun, whatever, kind of look at how beer has sent you around the globe, or when you're moving around yourself, kind of how you've enjoyed certain places and the beer they have together. But let's take a look at some stats. So for me, I had, start with uniques, 317 this year.
Ooh, I don't know. Let's keep mine to myself. I had 209 uniques this year, so Harrison edged me out quite a bit.
Right. But I mean, I think a lot of that I grew from 228 in 2018. So I think the most of that was probably the podcast, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I've definitely, I can blame the podcast for some of my drinks and extra beers. Yep. Plenty of conversations I'll be having with my amazing, lovely wife.
Right. Understanding, patient. Yep.
What about venues? In my head, I almost always just say bars, but I drink in a few different types of places, as we're going to cover here soon. I have 46 different venues that I've tagged.
Ooh, this past year, how many different number of venues? I think I had, where was it? I only had, I don't. I mostly drink at home. I'm not exciting. Most of it happens at my house. I only had 20 total venues, 10 of them being unique. So repeat customer at a couple places, but most of those places were my house. That was my number one venue.
That was going to be my next. Where have you checked in the most?
And then work. So that says a lot about me. But then number 3 is a brewery right down the road, Flying Machine Brewing Company, which they're doing awesome stuff. And then a couple local watering holes kind of downtown near the office. But that was different than the year prior. Flying Machine getting on there.
Those guys, they weren't even open.
I was going to say they just had their 1-year anniversary party recently. So yeah, early days for them. But it's been great having them around.
My top locations almost echo Harrison's, almost make me feel like Don Draper. The top location was work at Untappd. Probably the podcast lent a little bit to that. The second location is Pound or Pomerania. I have a lot of Pomeranian dogs. That's the name of my house. And then some local breweries, kind of the places that you end up frequenting the most, came up there for me.
Yeah.
The one I'm really excited to hear about is your top beers, Harrison. I believe this just pulls from a straight bottle cap rating, and
Oh, really?
I want to say I'm maybe proud and also maybe embarrassed of the one that came up first.
Yeah.
For me, I went to the beach with my dad and my father-in-law. They're not super craft beer guys, but we all spent 3 days at the beach together before summer got really busy. And so the beer that I rated the highest or gave the most consecutive high ratings to is Corona. It's Corona. There were limes involved, but I was 100% intoxicated on the beach those days.
Sure.
And I was probably taking some great pictures and having a great time.
Sure.
Maybe that affects ratings. It definitely does here. But for what it's worth, that was that was maybe the most fun weekend of my summer.
Right. Yeah. And mine is top beer was Bell's Two Hearted for like the second year in a row. But I could probably guess it's been like the, 6th year in a row or whatever. That beer is always, it's always just a few beers away for me. It's probably my Desert Island beer. If not that, my second beer of Sierra Nevada's Pale Ale would probably be right behind it in terms of Desert Island desirability, which really should be, some kind of like a low ABV coconut water beer if we're really thinking about what a desert island is.
Something from Sun Crush or something.
Right, exactly. But nah, it's all right.
It's all right. You're on a desert island. Right. Make the best of it.
I'm not going to get found. I'm just going to enjoy myself.
He already looks like Tom Hanks after Castaway.
I feel like Tom Hanks after Castaway internally.
My second beer I'm really proud of, I'm actually feeling like all is right with the world and none of this matters, from Burial that we drank on the podcast. I feel like the only reason Corona edged it out is because I didn't drink that many times, but
could be.
That beer was life-changing. There's
yes, it was.
Lights On from Treehouse made the list. Treehouse gets a lot of celebration, and it turns out they lived up to it. Mm-hmm. But I'm really happy. Number 4 on my list is a collaboration between a couple of North Carolina local breweries called Secret Lovers, which is a fun name. Beer. And that beer turned out, I think it was a triple IPA.
Triple IPA. And little known drinking socially fact, before we did a real first podcast and that kind of our testing podcast, which will probably never see the light of day, we drank Secret Lovers.
That's the first version.
Right. Yeah. The first version of it. Yeah. My 4 and 5 are Papa Chulo from Commonwealth, which is an amazing.
Commonwealth is amazing.
I think my breweries of the year, which we're going to talk about in a minute, our Hop Fly, which was number 5 for me, or 4 rather, was Table Banger, which is their New England Pale Ale from Hop Fly, and then Commonwealth. So those 2 breweries, Commonwealth in Virginia Beach and Hop Fly in, I think, Rocky Mount, North Carolina. They're Rock Hill. They're both doing just impressive stuff. Everything I've had from them has really been, it's been exciting, and in new ways, meaning they've kind of taken, if you can believe it or not, a New England style IPA and made it interesting and different and kind of exciting again, which I think is a pretty cool thing to do to stand out in that category. So both of them have in their own right. So pumped that it showed up on my list because I definitely, when thinking back to this year, was like, I wonder where they're going to land, what Commonwealths really jumped out to me. I'm trying to think back and don't need to. Untappd's got me covered.
Really nice to look at a pretty chart.
That's right. Yeah, exactly right. Look how organized my beer drinking is.
My top styles, I'll admit, are almost identical to 2018.
Yeah, same.
With one addition. I actually had a Saison replaced stout.
Impressive.
Which
wild.
I never would have guessed that coming back when Saisons were horse blankets and scared me. And now here I am. That was my number 3 top style based on rating. Sour above it, and then IPA, of course, rings in true. I won't deny that flag. IPAs are common, amazing, exciting, and different. But it was nice to see that list kind of change up a little bit for me. Harrison?
Yeah, mine's pretty identical to 2018 as well, though. So, number 1 being American IPAs, followed by New England American Pale Ales at 3, and double IPAs. So, the Pale Ales and double IPAs flip-flop for me. We're 3 and 4 this year, and last year we're 4 and 3 or whatever. And then New England Pale Ales, probably mostly because of that table banger from Hopfly, which came out in number 4. I've had that quite a bunch this past year. So it came out, number 5 for me. So pretty much IPAs or pale ales all the way down.
Rounding it out with geography, most beers from country. That's I'm going to get yelled at for that. Top 5 countries. USA number 1.
Sure.
I live here and America. We make a lot of beer. After that, my order is Germany, Mexico, Sweden, and Belgium. Harrison?
USA, number 1, and then Germany, Belgium, England, and Ireland.
Nice. I'm glad to see a little difference there. You're missing out on Sweden.
I know. I've heard. I forget. And Mexico.
True. That was maybe from the Corona.
Well, I'm sure it was.
Top states in the U.S., North Carolina. I live here. Virginia, and then way across the country to California, Massachusetts, and then New York, 5th place for me.
Yeah, I had North Carolina as 1, California as 2, with 47 different beers from California.
Sierra Nevada, maybe,
I was going to say, I was like, what is, that's right. Good old Chico. And then Virginia as number 3, Commonwealth probably making up 90% of those check-ins, then South Carolina and Colorado, which probably... fair amount of New Belgiums there.
Some amazing places.
Influencing. But so spread it a little bit, but definitely skewing towards the Southeast, which makes sense, kind of keeping things relatively local. But the California, you're right, that's definitely Sierra Nevada influencing that big time. Cool.
One last bit of info that was kind of cool, but also entirely predictable. I check in most of my beers on Saturday at 8 p.m. That's when most of my check-ins come from. But what I found really... At first, on the bar chart, I said, why do I have so many check-ins during the middle of the day? But it was at noon, and then it reminded me that sometimes I'll grab a beer with lunch, and it made complete sense. So that was really cool to see that the third hour of the day that I drink most is noon.
Right.
I'm 37. That's what we can do now.
That's right. You've made it. It's all... downhill from here. And for me, it's been number 1 was hour-wise at 9 to 10 p.m. I had 101 check-ins there. And Friday was my big day, followed by Saturday. And then right there, Sunday, which I guess makes sense with football and things. But Friday really dominating the check-in kind of popularity in terms of frequency and day of the week for me. And that 8 to 9, 9 to 10... most Fridays, I'm probably sitting on the couch, getting kids asleep, dogs. Where's Bing Crosby? Give me a beer, and let's check it in.
That I think is really cool to hear. Those little differences. Obviously, if I could only live in a spreadsheet, I'd be the happiest man in the world. But really cool to hear those differences. I love kind of reflecting on this year, and I'm really excited for what 2020 brings. Do we have, I don't know where we are on time, Harrison, do we have time to kind of recap some of our moments? You're laughing. Okay, we're going to go for it.
Let's go for it, yeah.
A couple of questions as we close out 2019. Harrison, what we've done a few episodes together. Your favorite episode, first thing that comes to mind.
The Oktoberfest episode was great. They're doing 5 beers for the first time and kind of through that, traveling kind of around the world, or at least in the U.S. and Germany. However, in episode 54, which is when we did Blind Pig and Pliny the Elder, both from Russian River, did a segment on juicy IPAs, i.e. kind of non-hazy New England IPAs, kind of talking about how that really makes sense from a production brewery standpoint, easier to you can keep fresher longer, distribute it, doesn't go bad or go goofy like you can deal with. That's a kind of primary problem with New England's. And to my somewhat surprise, although I guess not, a lot of the bigger regional breweries in the U.S. in their 2020 release calendar have some kind of juicy IPA as a seasonal or a new year-round beer. So it was pretty cool to see that. And I'm tooting my own horn a couple times this episode, but I saw those releases last week, and I was like, I can't believe this. I kind of talked about this like 6 months ago, and here we are seeing all these breweries have some a bunch of now what they're labeling as juicy IPAs that are going to hit all their markets. So I'm excited to try all those, and of course we'll be reporting back dutifully to you guys about that. How about you, John?
My favorite episode, I think, was the one we did with Mike from Session Beer.
Yeah.
It was our only interview episode that we've done so far. But what I liked is it took me out of my comfort zone, and we brought Mike in to record with us. It was 3 people, and the reward was amazing. I mean, yes, he brought an amazing beer.
Man, oh man.
I won't fault you there, Mike. Still, thank you.
Yes.
But it was also so nice having a third person here to share his view of beer, business, Untappd. That was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. I agree. Yeah.
Favorite beer? We drink on average more than 2 per episode, but I know we tried to set out with 2.
Right.
Harrison, the beer that comes to mind, favorite beer we've done so far.
Oh, my waffles, as you may have heard me exclaim, which was such a real kind of, my reaction to that was so genuine that so the beer I'm referring to is Burial's I'm actually feeling like all is right with the world and none of this matters, which was their crazy imperial stout we had a couple episodes ago. And it was great. It was just kind of smelled like waffles, hence the reaction, but tasted totally different and kind of was as you listen back to that one, that episode, it was definitely the biggest beer of the year I had in terms of impact, surprise, memorability, all that stuff. I'm still kind of hunting for that to kind of quench that desire, since no beer is yet to hit that same kind of the same little oh my waffle notes that one did. What about you, John?
It was if the beer that I remember being really excited about, you nailed it. That
right.
Everything is right in all the world and Burial's long titles. That beer holds a bar for me that'll be hard to meet.
Yep.
But the one I went to the answer, blackberry pineapple triple puffsicle. I remember bringing it back in a crawler and keeping it cold.
That's wild.
There was a hurricane coming, and I was worried about it getting warm. It was marshmallow popsicle with wild blackberries and pineapple and vanilla. That was a different. It was so far. It wasn't what I thought beer would ever be.
Right.
It was amazing. The answer is an outstandingly weird but outstanding brewery, and they put 450 North on the map for me out of Columbus, Indiana. Mm-hmm. Small town. But those guys make, from what I hear, some pretty similar beers, so I'm excited to look for them. Harrison, going into 2020, any beer, or let's say breweries on your wish list for 2020, anything that you want to try and...
Of course, yeah. So it looks like Old Nation out of Michigan is starting to distribute in North Carolina. I just had their M43, which is kind of their flagship IPA for the first time. It was cool. I've seen a couple other things from them kind of coming into some local bottle shops and bars. So that's going to be kind of goal of early 2020 is getting my hands on all that and see what it's all about. Because I hear about it, talk about it, see it all the time on Untappd, and have yet to be able to get my hands on some. And now it seems to be here. So looking forward to checking that out. And a brewery that I've enjoyed before a bunch, but it sounds like they're also coming down North Carolina way is Night Shift out of Everett, Massachusetts. And I've had
very familiar.
Right, had a lot of their beer before. Actually, one of the breweries I worked at, the owner of that brewery went to high school with one of the founders of Night Shift, so we had a nice little pipeline there of fresh Night Shift beers all the time, but it's been years since I've had it, so I'm excited that it's also kind of making its way to being down here more regularly because they do some really good stuff, and kind of just pumped that they're doing well and making moves where they can be in the Southeast, being up in basically outside of Boston where they're headquartered. John, what about you?
That's I'm really excited about M43. I've never had that beer, but it crushed the entirety of Michigan on Untappd trends for years. For me, a brewery that's on my list is Angry Chair out of Florida. Lots of acclaim, lots of check-ins. I've never had a beer from them, and that's I hear they do good dark beers, and I want to get my hands on one this year.
Yeah.
Another way I kind of approached it, and this will be a lot harder for me to get. There's a brewery called Wander Beyond from Manchester, England. And I talked to a man named Simon 4 years ago or ish, when I first started working at Untappd. And he had this bar in Manchester, and he wanted to keep a tap list updated. And we were talking back and forth. And I said, I think that's what we can do. We were just starting like the verified venues on Untappd.
Right.
And Simon's awesome. He still manages the Knot. He had just, when I first met him, had just done a bottle share and was telling me about all these amazing beers. And we both hit it off right away. Yeah. Later, the Knot kind of is, we'll say, sisters or partners with Wander Beyond, the brewery. And I think they're like in the top 5 rated breweries on Untappd in England. Mm-hmm. I don't think they distribute very far. I don't know how I'm going to get my hands on them, but I would love to grab some Wander Beyond beer in 2020.
That sounds awesome.
What about, okay, let's close it up, Harrison. Favorite, do you have, we'll keep it generic and vague as we often do, favorite moment from 2019 on Drinking Socially?
I think for me, it was our first episode, both recording it and then kind of going through the editing process with Chris, our awesome editor and kind of digital wizard, and then kind of getting it out there into the world. It was like kind of a long road up until that point, and kind of finally getting there and making that episode and seeing it happen, and then seeing people listen to it and the feedback that came from it. That was wild, because a lot had to happen to get to the point where we were actually sitting in a room together recording these episodes, but we did it. And that was wild. So yeah, that'll definitely be not even this favorite moment of this year, but favorite moment of the past while. I'm sure as we keep doing this, we'll keep looking back at that and remember it fondly as being this starting line, the finish line that was also a starting line to where we are today. John, what about you?
That's poetic. And it takes me back to nervously trying to document every word I was going to say, which is not what we do today. For me, we did, I guess we'll call it an Instagram challenge, where we had $25 store credit. And it's selfish, I think, of me to say that I loved reading that, but there were so many. I think there was like 40 posts on Instagram, people tagging friends and talking about the podcast, and it's so nice to hear that that you guys listening to it hear what you enjoy, and whether it's good or bad. It's nice hearing. I mean, I have fun doing this with Harrison, but ultimately, as we look forward to 2020. I think it's really important that we do this with you in mind, and hopefully bring you content that you're excited about. That for me, reading those posts was the most exciting moment of the podcast for 2019.
For sure. Awesome. Cool.
We're going to sign off for 2019 and season 2. Harrison and I are going to be joining you promptly in 2020 on New Year's Day, January 1st. We're going to launch season 3. It's not going to be a big change like Lost, but we've got to. We're going to try and get more interview content set up for you.
Yep.
We got a couple, maybe one cool thing in the works. Hopefully, Untappd related.
Oh yeah, it's going to be crazy. It's going to be awesome.
It's been an honor and a privilege recording and taking your feedback for what we came into season 2 here for Drinking Socially. And I'm very excited for where we go next year.
As am I, Tom. It's been a fun journey so far, but really just beginning. 2020 is going to be the year of drinking socially. That's what I'm seeing in my crystal ball that is just the reflection in this gingerbread stout bottle.
Other than that, show notes will be available at podcast.untappd.com. If you have any questions or feedback, or if you want to tag us and share your year in beer, connect with Untappd on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, or connect directly with Harrison and I at facebook.com/drinking socially, or look for Drinking Socially on YouTube.
Yes, definitely do that. And other than that, we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Cheers.
Cheers.